Today we are going to talk about something called class. Now, if you come from programming, any other programming language, if you're familiar with classes, it would be quite interesting to know that JavaScript did not have a class um, keyword till ES6, which means that it it did not implement class in the way other languages implemented, and it implemented it through the prototype chain. So uh, you have already learned what the prototype chain is, and class is something which has been used in, let's say, Java or even Python and C++ and all of these languages. So class is similar to prototype, and it is not a new feature in JavaScript. It is actually a sugar syntax. So we have worked with prototypes already. So all the power that is there in prototypes is the same thing with classes, except it's a little more easier to write, and it is quite similar to the how other languages have implemented it. So it feels like it is much easier to write, and you get familiarized with this concept when you move to another language also. So it does the same thing with prototypes, where you can do inheritance, you can create a shared member functions. Um, you can make it private and public, all of that stuff. And you have your constructor in this, similar to how we create a function and then use the new keyword. It is similar to that we have a constructor method. And you can have multi-level inheritance also. So today we're going to show a couple of simple ways what we have, how we can implement using class. So first, you may have noticed earlier that if you used the term class, you get an error because it is a reserved keyword. And it is because we have to, the moment we have to create a class, we have to use the keyword class. So let's take a simple example of a rectangle. In this case, we can, so how we initialize a constructor is by calling a constructor. Of, so we invoke it like this, and or we declare it like this. Let's say our rectangle takes the height and width as arguments to our initial class, or when we create a new instance as such. So we can write this dot height is equal to height, and we can give this dot width is equal to width. So now if you were to write let box is equal to new rectangle, and let's say we pass in 5 and 10, and let's just log this information to see what the values are. And you can see it becomes of this type, this object of type rectangle. And you can see the height 5 and 10 in it. So the constructor is just a special function, which how we would write this in the prototype chain would be something like this rectangle, and it takes height, width. So let's just comment this code out. So I'm going to show you how similar this is to what we have done already. All right, and we can write rectangle 5, 10. And you get the same output. So we can see how class is the same as or similar to the prototype chain that we worked with. Now let's go back to this first code and write a member function for this, something where you can calculate area, for example. So let's say we write area here, and all we have to do is return this dot height into this dot width, right? And if you write box dot area now, and we can invoke that function, you can see that it is printing 50. Now let's do the same thing with our prototype method, right? So we'll just call it this, and let's call it prototype dot area is equal to function this dot height into this dot width, and you can see that we get the same output. So this is how similar classes are with the prototype chain. So let's look at a few more examples. So let's look at the similar example, what we did with the person object that we made in our prototype class. Right, so let's create a person, and let's create a constructor which takes the name and energy of the person. So this dot name is equal to name, energy is equal to energy, and let's give it some methods for it. So in this case, I'm using template literals here. So I can write this dot name, and the person is eating, and I'm going to change the value of the energy here. Dot energy, I'm going to increase it by the amount. I'm going to create the sleep, create a simple amount, and I can say this dot name is, and then I can say sleeping. So I can increase this energy here, and I can do this. Let's say we can write code. All right, and I'm going to give it code, and let's say similar to this, I'll just write this dot name is coding, and it's going to take up our energy. So I'm going to minus it. Time amount, it's up to you to name it according to your class. So we can create a new person in this point here. Let's say Sai, and then give him say 15, say 12 here for J. Let's say Sai.code, and let's say 5 hours. Let's say sleep, let's say 10 hours. And you can see this. So this is very similar to how we have done the prototype chain class. Just to give you the example, I'm just going to comment this out. I'm going to show you, paste out the code that we have written for our prototype class. Right, and if I just write code and sleep, you can get, you're seeing that we get the same output. All right, so this is there in our prototype class already, so you can refer that and see how close this is with the class that we have created. So it makes a little more, so this would be this for us, not, you don't have to write return here. we can do a new person in this case, and it will be this. All right, so something on these lines would be what a prototype class would be. So now let's look at how we can do levels of inheritance as such, right? So we did a class on the wizards, for example. So similar to that, let's say we wanted to uh, create inheritance in this, or we had to take properties from two different levels, let's say. Now, taking the same example, what you can do is I can create a separate class. Now, let's say we have different types of persons out there. So instead of person, let's say I wanted something like a coder let's say if these are like employees, for example, right? We have operations, marketing, sales, all of that. So if I were to create a coder out of this, I can write class coder, all right? And let's say this code property belong to the coder. Now, how do we get this properties from the class object? Now, we use something called, if you remember, we did object dot create and stuff, and we took it from the prototype chain. So we did something like coder dot prototype is equal to object dot create of person dot prototype. Something on these lines we were invoking to get this, and we would use call apply bind, or we would use call to get invoke it for the first time from the person class. So this makes it easier for us to use inheritance with class by using class. So what we can do is we can extend the property of the class with this person object like this. So now it says that this coder extends properties from person class or person object. All right, and what we need to do also here is that inside the constructor, so let's say it takes name, energy, and let's say role. All right, so we invoked using in our previous class, or using uh, we would send something like this, right? So similar to that, there is another shorthand here. It is called super, and we would pass the name and energy via the super command. All right, and we can pass this to role here. All right. Now, let's say J, let's assume is a coder. All right, and let's say he's a front end. Now, if you were to run this, you would get an error saying that site does not have a code, right? We would get an error. This throws an error because site doesn't have a code function. So if we were to change this to J and this to Psi, you can see that, oops, I gave the same name here. You can see that we get the desired output here. Now, if I were to write j.sleep, say 5 hours, you get the methods which are there in your person object also. So we are now able to access all the properties in your person class. So you can see how easy it becomes, or much faster you're able to use class. And this is a pattern that you have to follow for creating class components and stuff. So this makes a lot more easier to use the prototype chain, and it is essentially a sugar syntaxing of the existing prototype chain that you have. But we have already covered prototype chain, and we have a good understanding of how it works already. So class should not be it's not a new concept. It's just a better way of writing it. So there are many examples we can give about how to do inheritance as such. So there are a lot more other stuff in the notes that I would like you guys to go through. And then this should, a couple of exercises on this should give you a better understanding of how to use classes. All right, so we'll end the session here.